Hey, everybody, this is Matt Halloran from Zocks. I'm the chief evangelist, and we have something for you that is really quite groundbreaking. And I'm not saying that as a kind of a tongue in cheek sort of thing. We had this first webinar that we went over some MCP stuff. And we had overwhelming response to people just really wanting to know how to do it. So we took it back to the team, and the team, well, they started building stuff so that we could have Mark Gilbert, who's our CEO, and we've got Neil on, who's an actual advisor, just like all of you, who has built an unbelievable MCP protocol that he's going to share a little bit later. But a couple of very quick housekeeping things. We are recording this, so if you have to drop, just go ahead and drop. We're going to send you a recording afterwards. And also, since we're sending you the recording, if you know another financial services professional that could really use this, please make sure that you share the link that we're going to send with you, the recording, to them, because this is really a practice-changing thing. We're going to run about 45, 50 minutes is the ultimate goal here. And if you have any questions, please put them either in the chat or Q&A. We've got a couple of people on our team in the background who are going to be managing that chat, and they're going to bubble them up to us if we have any big picture questions. So, Mark, I'm going to just turn this over to you, my friend.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Matt. And thanks everyone for your time today. We're really excited. Some of you we may have already chatted with or heard us talk a little bit about MCP, but we're going to start from the start, go through this fairly quickly, but happy to dive in, wherever, I guess in a few areas. And I think more importantly, more exciting than me and even more exciting than Matt, we have Neil, who has been using this, in his, I would say, day-to-day practice, and that is a lot more interesting. So we're super excited to show you that. Before we hop in, though, one of the questions we get all the time is really kind of like, what is MCP? What does it do for me? Why should I use this thing? MCP is actually a very technical acronym in the sense of like it's essentially APIs between AI systems is probably the easiest way to think about it. So just like in the past when we said, hey, system A integrates with system B, that would be using something typically called REST APIs on the internet. There's a few other ways of doing it, but that was the most common. When we look at AI systems, we often will use something called MCP, which is just an easy way for the AI systems to communicate. What it really means to you is that we actually, with Zocks now, can get all of the rich context that is inside of Zocks about your clients, about any of these things, and get that onto into the other AI systems that you want. So today, I'll walk you through using this with Claude, just an Anthropic product that a lot of people use. We are also in the OpenAI, the ChatGPT library. So if you use ChatGPT, everything I'm showing you here looks very similar in that world, and you can go use it too, whatever you want to use. And for those people using Copilot, I believe we're going to put this in the chat a little later or in the questions and answers, but we have the ability to actually install it through Copilot Studio. So essentially an admin I'll say on your Microsoft admin accounts needs to go in and install it. It's frankly not the most straightforward thing, but you can do it a little bit. And then Copilot also has access to it as well, which is great. And I'm seeing a question already from Gary, and we'll cover that in a little bit just around kind of like privacy. And that's a huge piece to hit as well. So at a high level with MCP, again, what we can do, and the examples we'll show you today are really hooking it up to Claude. So what's happening there is instead of taking, like transcripts or all your notes from stuff and copying and pasting them around into these AI chatbots and these AI systems, you actually can just access Zocks data directly in that and do a bunch of really cool things. These systems also allow us to put in essentially like, templates and projects and all of these things that make this a little bit easier for you. So we're super excited to show you what that looks like. And you can think of this really as a bridge to connect the data from Zocks into the AI system in a way that is governed, that is secure with that connection, that respects the different privacy pieces. And what you'll see more and more is that we are going to give you more and more controls essentially on more and more controls essentially on what what data is going into the AI systems and what you're allowing it to see in that. So super excited about that. And with that, I think we'd love to get to the next slide and hop into a bit of a demo. Awesome. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. I think I'm up for the first demo, and then Neil's getting the lion's share of this. So I will, as I mentioned, keep mine fairly quick so you can get to the more exciting stuff. but I'm actually going to show you two quick things. For those using Zocks already, this is Zocks. If you go down to the integrations tab and then click on Claude, sorry, on integrations and then click on apps. So when you get to the integrations tab, you see everything here. On the apps button, you can go in and connect, manage. You can also go in from Claude, and you can see from ChatGPT, you can do it directly from their library to connect in. But this is essentially where you manage things, and you can look at what access it has, what permissions it has, and all of those capabilities as well. So it's quite rich here. But more importantly and more exciting, I just want to show you what this looks like once we connect them. So this is in Claude. I actually have a team demo account with Jim Hardman where we do a lot of demos together. So you'll see his name pop up in my account because we share things. And just like with Zocks, in Claude, you can actually share across your teammates and do those things as well with projects. And so what I'm going to go in and do is I'll actually just start by asking it. I want to make sure it's hooked up. Can you see Zocks data, Claude? And it's going to go in and ask and look and introspect. And I just want to make sure that the connection's hooked up. And this is a way to tell that MCP is working for you. And so it's going through and essentially like interrogating what it can do and what data it has here. And says, yes, I can see your data. Here are the different things I can see. Here are some meetings that you have and everything else. And as I mentioned, this is Jim and I share this environment. And so then I can go in and click in here and I can type in anything I want and ask it. So I can ask it to fill out forms. I can ask it for, any information on things. There's some really cool stuff here. One of the things though that we also do is we have this concept of connectors and skills. So Zocks is connected here. Just as an example, I also have Box connected, which is a file share that a lot of people use. There's a ton of connectors both for Claude and ChatGPT. So I would recommend you or welcome to explore those, and you can use them together, which I'll show you a quick example of in a second too. But then I can go in and say, hey, I want to add this from Zocks, and you can see we have a number of, I will say, kind of default examples here that are really quite powerful. So I'm going to pick an annual client letter. It's going to ask me some questions like, who is this for? So I'm going to say, hey, I want this letter for John and Michelle Smith. I prefer structured HTML as an output instead of PDFs. And I love warm and personal. And then I'm actually going to add the prompt. And what this is going to do is it'll actually build the prompt for me. And you can see here it gives a whole bunch of context in a little file to add. What I'm also going to do, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here, just like a baking show, is I'm actually going to paste in a bunch of bullet points that I've used before with this that I've tried. So I want to create a personalized letter, should use Zocks Intelligence, provide an overview, and I'm going to hit go. And it's going to start thinking and asking and telling me, frankly, what it's doing. But the interesting thing here is that it has access to John and Michelle Smith in this case. And it's actually starting to build a letter for the whole year, like an annual client letter. So it's essentially looking at every time I've met with them, what are their goals at the start of the year? What happened at the end of the year? What were the things that we accomplished with them, which is awesome? What are the things maybe that we're focusing on next year? You can see it's going to work through step by step. It's starting to get through contacts. This is going to take a couple minutes and I won't make you sit through it. So I ran it earlier today and I'll show you what the results look like and give you a few other examples. But it's just really interesting here. You can see if you go through all of this, all of the different things it's doing. If there's multiple contacts, it'll ask you which one you want to use it for, all of these things as well, or if it needs other information to solve out. So I'm going to go in here and I'm actually just going to open up a previous one where you can see I did the same thing. And as I scroll down, it'll tell me all the different data it put in. This took about 4 or 5 minutes to run. And then because I asked for an HTML, I'm actually just going to open it up in Chrome. I don't know why that's popping up on my other screen. Apologies. But what happens here is it'll basically come in and says, hey, Jim said our profile template is Jim Hardman Financial. So you can also go in and say, hey, this is what our brand looks like for our firm. This is, our letterhead, all of these types of things, and it'll match to it. And then it basically goes through everything from where we began, the year that changed, what happened, all the different events. I actually put a chart in around like how that plan is coming to life. It's quite powerful. And, from a lot of the advisors we talk with, they would love to send these to their clients every year. It's a very powerful thing to stay connected and frankly, remind them of all the progress they made on the journey, which I think a lot of you, know feels slow at times, but matters as it compounds. and really kind of walks through all this. And then the nice thing is you can iterate in the systems too. So if you're in ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot, you can say, hey, make this more formal, make this shorter, make this longer, whatever you want to do, and it'll actually regenerate it for you. Once you get it down and you have something you like, you can then reuse it for your other clients too. So say, hey, don't just do it for John and Michelle, do it for Matt, do it for Neil, and it'll just basically go in and start to produce all of these for you. So it's super powerful, and frankly allows you to have a very personalized touch with a lot of people, in a way that is just, frankly doesn't take you 10, 20, 30, 40 hours to do, which it would normally take if you were trying to do this across all of your clients. Some other really powerful examples are you can actually ask it as well for even coaching. We have scorecards in Zocks around conversations, but you can say at what point in this conversation did they seem to engage or not, or where did they go? And it'll actually go in and analyze that for you and even show you like, when did they start to share very personal information, which is a big sign for like a client, or prospect starting to build trust in you. Another quick example of just how these two systems can work together is I actually just dragged in a PDF, which was a Schwab account application. You can fill out forms, if they're in Zocks and Zocks, there's, as everyone knows, a ton of applications in the space for almost endless account types. And so you can actually drop PDFs in here too. And what I did is I just said, use Zocks data for Peter and Paul Reynolds and combine that with the information that they shared with me in a Box account. So I was using Box here to where they would upload information. It actually went through both, filled out both, pulled in all the information. It will tell you if anything's missing, and then filled out the PDF to that. And I can just open that as well. So it's very powerful. Again, just at a high level here, the big things that are happening is because all of the context that you've had with your clients, not just from the conversations, but other attached systems, we understand more and more about them. We built out a profile. One of the interesting, I'll just say kind of like tech things here that's quite powerful is when we actually see the MCP interface get used, over 90% of those queries that we're asking it actually never go down to transcripts. So if you are, let's say at maybe a firm that doesn't hold transcripts for very long, like maybe a week or so, which quite a lot of frankly, the broker dealers do and others do as well. A lot of this is still, I would actually say the vast majority of this is still available to you because the vast majority of questions and interactions we're seeing are going to this client profile. It doesn't actually have to go down to the specifics of like words from one conversation or another. So that just gives you a quick overview of kind of how to get going, how it shows up in Zocks, how you can see the permissions. We did get a question on kind of the different versions, and maybe I'll save that a little later, Matt, if that's okay with you, and we can hit the end of like what are the versions, both with OpenAI and Anthropic, so Claude and ChatGPT, that people are using from a data security settings, and what do you want to do there? And we'll talk through that. But I will say on that note, I'd pass it back to you, Matt, and we can get into the even more interesting stuff.
Yeah, so we're going to jump into the fireside chat now, but I've got just a couple of quick things. Number one, so Mark exported that as an HTML. You can export it as a Word document or whatever too. So if you want to be a little bit more hands-on with it, instead of iterating the prompt, you can do. I just did that on my MCP with my Claude. So that was absolutely fantastic. And the other thing is, I'm devastated that you just told me something about a baking show I didn't know, Mark, and so now I don't know if I can ever watch those baking shows again. So yeah, this is a rough Wednesday now for me. All right, Neil. Well, so you're an advisor using this in your practice really on a regular basis. Yeah. When did this epiphany hit you? When did you realize that you could use this and it could be practice changing?
Zocks in general, or the integration with AI?
Well, I mean, you could do a shameless plug for Zocks. I appreciate that, but let's talk about the MCP.
So I sat through one of the first webinars you guys did with the MCP side of things and saw the letter and whatnot, and really just kind of started playing around with it. And I've started using Claude Cowork, which is on the paid version that resides more on your actual workstation than the cloud version does. And the ability that it has to look at other files and incorporate that into the meeting prep thing that I've kind of developed on my own with that. So it was kind of one of those things where, wow, the letter output's great, but what if we do this? And I just kind of went another step with that.
Well, and let's talk about what if we do this, Mark. When you guys made the decision to spend, a lot of our programming team's time on building this out. What gap did you see, or did you hear from our advisory board or the advisors you've talked to that you really wanted to solve that gap?
Yeah, so we see a few different things, and I think Neil will show some of this today. Like, there's a lot, obviously, as we continue to build Zocks, where we see it used quite regularly, and we want to make that very easy from Zocks, right? So again, we can fill out forms, pull all this information, all that. Um, Even with all of that, right, some people want to do things either that we can't do yet, or
Mhm.
frankly, may never put in the system. So like the example we just showed of, like a tailored annual letter, something frankly we've wanted to do for a while. We just haven't had the time. I think Neil's going to walk through some just interesting things where he really cares deeply about the exact tailoring, right, of how things look and feel for the
Yeah.
client, which makes sense. And it just gives you like full control over that. So I would say that's one area that's pretty big. We see another area people are using it more to do analysis. So as I mentioned, like they may say like, hey, like why did this client go well? Why did it not? More at the firm level, if they want to start asking questions, you can, like these broad LLMs and AI systems are extremely good at analyzing a lot of data. And so they can start to find patterns for you and everything else. And then the third one, which people aren't seeing yet, although we actually had a great announcement last week, I would say leading towards this quickly, is, as you're seeing more and more AI systems come online, and when I say that, like, existing software used that are adding AI capabilities or new types of software with it, those also will expose out through MCP. So we announced, I believe it was last week, Conquest, as our very recent partner. On the planning side, it's used heavily in Canada. We have a lot of Canadian customers now, which we love. And we're seeing it used, as well in the States. It has a lot of AI capabilities built in directly. And so you'll start to see more and more come out there where you can ask things in Zocks that will go directly into Conquest and vice versa as well. And so one of the nice things is that people can really sit in whatever UI they want. I think people are used to like, I go to this app to do this, I go to this app to do this, and that makes sense. In a lot of this now, you can do some stuff in Zocks, you can do some stuff in Claude, you can do some stuff in other systems, and it's really whatever is most comfortable for you because we're really, frankly, breaking down these data silos that have been such a challenge, frankly, in the industry.
So, Neil, I think a lot of people expect the world from AI now, which is a little bit maddening for those of us who've been in financial services for a long time, that this is just one of those things that they think it's like this magical panacea, this wonderful fix-all of everything. And we know that it's amazing, but it doesn't fix everything. When you were working with this, what really surprised you? Like you're like, I don't really know if it's going to be able to do this, but ding, 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 it did do these things. So can you give us a couple examples?
Yeah. So the meeting prep skill that I developed was more something that Zocks wasn't able to do on its own from pulling information from the other two systems I use, which are Red Tail and Orion. And we have a very specific agenda and template that we kind of use for our annual review meetings when we sit down with our clients. And it's really useful for me at the end to have a memo that's has all these things on it so I can just quickly go and okay, 10 minutes, I'm ready to go for the meeting and I don't have to spend a bunch of time looking things up. And Zocks was not quite able to pull that exact information from Orion. So when I started messing around with this and some other experimenting that I'd done outside of Zocks with the AI and having it be able to read from a spreadsheet or read from a database kind of made me think, oh, this maybe will work. So it was kind of a combination of those two things that I kind of started down this path. And that's what led me to where I am today in this regard. So it was kind of just filling a need that
Yeah.
in experimentation that got me here.
Well, and I really do highly recommend that you experiment with non-private client data, right?
Yes,
Just go
of
in and
course.
mess around with this. I was just playing with my Claude with the different integrations, and I was really surprised at what it was able to do, what it was able to integrate with the programs that I have on my computer.
Mm.
Just a fun side tangent here is I've built a daily briefing, which is a pretty standard thing, where it will pull from a bunch of different sources, and every morning all I have to do is to say to Claude, "Good morning," and it will populate this very, very nice thing that talks about what appointments I have, email that I have to, Slack messages messages, Asana tasks, those sorts of things. And it also pulls some relevant news, like, who won in the basketball game last night. But, it's a lot of fun to just be able to get that because, that's kind of what some of us really wanted from our robots that aren't here yet. So, the robot just walks in and says, "Good morning, Matt. Here's your day." And so now I have Claude doing that. But let's talk about your day because I do my daily briefing every day. What is a day in the life of you using this system that you've built look like for you? How does it change your workflow? What has it done for your life?
So basically, this workflow is cut down meeting prep for me and my staff. It's not just me, but me and my staff probably from 30 to 45 minutes to about 10 minutes to do the workflow to get ready for a meeting. So I can, if I'm super busy and have appointments scheduled, stacked on top of each other, I basically have this 1 to 2 page memo that I can sit and leaf through, find the things that I want to talk about, and can step into that meeting without having to spend an hour or 30 minutes to an hour going back through old notes and looking for certain specific tasks, talking points, and the non-financial talking points is what we use a lot too, just for conversation starters, right? So it helps consolidate that all into one place, and I can sit there with that on my desk during the meeting and just refer back to it and use that to get things started. And it's cut down on some time that it takes otherwise to go through that process.
Being in the industry for 20 years and working with offices just like yours, Neil, I mean, that meeting prep part of this always used to be super stressful for our advisors. They were terrified that they were going to walk in and miss something and say something that wasn't 100% correct or forget a birthday. I mean, there's just simple things like that now you can go ahead and pull it. And I just think that's amazing. Okay, but now here's the best part. You're going to show us something. Like you're going to give everybody on the webinar something like you sink their teeth into. So take it away.
So when I look at my meetings for that day, and I kind of just jump into things, I come to Claude and I have a bunch of different things set up here, but under my projects, I have a project that is just meeting prep, and I simply come in and type meeting/meeting prep.
Oh, can you share your screen?
Oh, I thought I did share my screen. My mistake.
And that's why I am here.
There, I got part way, just didn't get all the way. So I go to my Claude project in this, and then I just come in here and type meeting prep memo, and typing in real time is always fun. And then I type in my client's name and hit return, and off it goes, and it's off and running, and it's going through, and I have not been so comfortable where I just do always allow on the permissions it asks for various things. So it will prompt me to give it permission to access certain directories and certain things in the Zocks system. And it goes through and reads some of and we'll talk about these markdown files here in a minute. And I saw coming up on the chat, what is HTML? Well, get ready for something even more new, which is the MD side of things, if you're into the super nerdy side of this. But basically, then it goes through and it runs this skill that we've built. And by saying we, I mean that Claude and I together collaborated in kind of an interview process. And Claude really built the skill based on what I wanted it to put out there. I didn't write code. I didn't go in and design anything. I said, this is what I want. And Claude figured out how to do it, which is really wild. It took me about an hour or so to get it built, but it was time well spent to invest in that. And that's how you have to view it, as an investment as such. So as it kind of runs through all this stuff and goes through that. But what it generates at the end of the day is this nice memo that comes up, and I've redacted this one, and it gives me a summary of all the things that I really want to see during the course of a meeting in advance. So one of the things our fee wants to know is, do we have it assigned to the proper model for portfolio management? What is the fee schedule that we are charging on that client? We have to verify that that's correct. So this is able to pull from an Orion spreadsheet that I have set up and stored on my local hard drive, and it's pulling this information. I also want to know what's the performance done year to date. So if there's any big surprises, I can at least look into it or dig into some of the details as to why things are doing well or doing poorly. And then it also talks about required minimum distributions. And we use the RMD side as a significant planning opportunity for qualified charitable distributions primarily, but also to understand the tax consequences of that as well. And then we get into other things where we have information, and this is pulling from the Zocks information in particular, the family information. This particular individual's son was a senior in high school last time we met, and he was considering a bunch of different schools. Personal interests and hobbies, personal characteristics and the communication style, other summaries, key discussion points that we've talked about in the past, and probably my favorite section is the conversation starters. So we can ask about his son's college choice and what's going on, and other things that we've talked about that we had dealt with in the past that maybe weren't completed either through us or through the client not providing or following through on the things that they said they were going to do. Because as much as we try to do stuff, clients are always great about getting their homework done too, right? So we have this great memo, and this particular client's a very detailed situation, and it's more pages than normal. It ended up being about 7 pages. And I think they're going to make this available to share so someone can see as an example. And again, I've kind of taken all the personal information out of that so not to jeopardize my client in this situation. But it basically starts with, when we're doing this, with these, the key thing here is these 3 spreadsheets that we have. And that's the Orion account data, the performance by registration data from Orion, and the RMD tables from Orion. And basically once a month, I go in and download the Orion account data and the performance by registration. I redact certain very important things. I delete columns out of that spreadsheet, which are account numbers, social security numbers, addresses, dates of birth, anything that would be considered PII. I delete those columns from those spreadsheets. Takes a couple minutes, but it's there for the rest of the time. Things like the Orion household number only means something to Orion. It doesn't really mean anything to anybody else. Nobody can really use that. And then it is reading that file, those files, Claude is, and then compiling that information along with the meeting notes. And this is the thing, this is the gap that it filled in the Zocks system, right? Zocks wasn't able to see that Orion data. So now it's able to pull that in, so I have something that I'm ready to look at right then and there.
Okay, so we are going to share that. I do have to say that how long this document was a little bit eye-opening for me. But I'm going to take this a little bit further, and I'm going to warn everybody.
Right.
We didn't really go over this in the prep. So Neil, I'm just going to ask you on the fly here a little bit. But when it comes to so how early are you doing this in the process? So like, is this 5 minutes before the meeting? Is this the day before the meeting? Can you talk a little bit more about the practical usage of that document?
Yeah. So usually we'll run that first thing in the morning when I look at my calendar and see I've got these appointments today. I'll run that for each of those appointments. And then I'll print them out. And that, again, I'll go back to that document being that as long as it was. Most of them are about 2 to 3 pages.
Okay.
Most of them aren't 7 pages. That one is just it's an extreme example, I guess, for lack of a better term, right? It's not the standard output that I get. Most of them are 2 to 3 pages. I'll run these in the mornings when I come in, knowing that I have these 3 meetings today. I need to be ready for all 3 of those meetings. I'll have them, and I'll have them printed out. When my focus can turn to that meeting, I can grab that memo and read it, go through it, take it into the meeting with me. I don't hand it to the client. It's internal use only kind of thing. And then I can scribble some other notes on it from what I might remember. Not everything's 100% correct. So I can kind of filter that out as well. In that particular memo, it says the client's an Ohio State fan. That's not true. I'm the Ohio State fan, but Zocks somehow has got that confused. We'll forgive it, right? But and so we'll do it in the mornings before to start the day. Is kind of how I look at that.
So if you're an advisor but you can run this 48 hours before so that
Sure.
either your team could go ahead. And that's my next level question. I did a bad job with this and I'm sorry. Like everybody knows who Mark is. Neil, can you just tell everybody just a little bit about your practice makeup
Yeah.
and like, do you have a
Yeah.
niche or somebody you serve specifically?
So we don't really have a niche. We are in a small town in southeastern Ohio. My team in particular is I have two advisors that are kind of learning underneath of me. One of them has been in the business for all of 5 months. The other one's been around for about 4 years now. And I have an office manager. And trying to get to the point where I feel comfortable enough to do this at an enterprise level where I can turn this over to
Mm,
my junior advisor and say, hey, do these meeting preps through Claude. But that one that involves an investment in the Claude side of things because I have to have the enterprise version, which it's not ridiculous. It's $1,200 a year, not awful. And to roll it out to the team and then figure out the internal structures of how to store all that information behind the scenes that's using the co-work. And I want to stress that again, that it's not, I'm not throwing this out on the web. It's all done inside that Claude co-work thing. And I'm not a good enough expert to explain how co-work is different
sure.
from the website things.
Well, but you said something earlier too, which I also want to highlight, which is this was an iterative process, and
Mhm.
I love that you allowed Claude to help you build the prompts that was needed
Mhm.
in order to make Claude work more efficiently. Was that something that you had heard that you could do, or were you just messing around with it and like, oh, it's telling me to do this?
So I've done that with other things
Okay.
in Claude, just messing around. And, I'm that kind of nerd, right? That will get into this stuff. And so basically just kind of said, here's what I'm looking for. Let's do it. Here's where the files are. Let's do it. Zocks, I've got the connector set up for Zocks. Let's use that, and then ask me whatever questions to clarify the output. If there's something that is not clear, let's do this. And then let's build the skill. Let's build the context files. Let's build the uh, main things that you're going to refer to every time we do this.
Okay. Hey, Mark, the chat really blew up with something there. I don't know if you saw that. Would you mind talking a little bit about the Orion integration? Because it seemed that that was a pretty hot topic.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to scan the chat and see if I got all the context on it. So generally the Orion integration will pull quite a lot of data from Orion, like quite broadly. A simple way to look at it is if you can go ask inside of Zocks, like if you can go ask the AI assistant if it can, like for, let's say a data point, let's say, Matt, you're my client, like tell me this thing about Matt. That's there. By default, for data security reasons, we don't pass all of the data in the connections all the way through, frankly. So I saw another question, apologies, we haven't had a chance to answer yet, around Redtail of like, can I access every data point in Redtail? The way to think about it is like we essentially look across all of these pieces and see it. So if you're keeping the data in Zocks around the client and everything we kind of know about them and use them, we'll have context on that. But you can't, necessarily go down to each point in each of the connected systems and grab them. It's not like when we ask, we'll go to everything and go. We essentially are looking across different pieces. There's a few different reasons for that, from data security to also just frankly the data rights of the different apps that we use. And
Okay.
so that is one of the, to the earlier questions, Matt, that you asked around like, when do we use MCP? Why is it, like
Hmm.
through, let's say through Claude versus in Zox directly and things like that. There are things for a number of reasons that we just won't see. Like as an example, in some of the systems, there's very rich, PDF reports that they produce that you can't
Hmm.
really like pull into Zox yet. You can take those and frankly drag those in. Again, be cautious, and we'll talk more about the data security pieces. There's definitely a number of questions in there around that.
Yeah.
But it, like I would say, like the broader LLMs are very good at analyzing those. So it is a bit of a way to kind of like work where if the integration isn't directly or you can't get directly to that point, it'll just basically go through. Like you can always drag a PDF in, and it does quite well at understanding that.
Okay. Well, I mean, not to just jump ahead because I know the team hasn't worked with me long, but I love to do that because can we just talk about that real quick, please? I mean, I
Yeah.
really want to talk a little bit more about because I know the one of the things, and Neil, I think you've heard this, Mark, you hear this, I hear this at conferences all the time, is people are really concerned about the security components of the
100%.
data. So could you elaborate on that, please, Mark?
Yeah, so like the way I'll just, I guess, back up a little bit and then maybe we can talk through some of the details on it now and what you want to do there. Or just, what the options are for everyone. But essentially at a high level, when you connect two systems together, that second system, sorry, can see a lot of data from the first system, just straight up. And I say that in the sense of like, you know, just like, we have a lot of people, let's say, connect Zocks to eMoney. Hopefully trust Zocks. We've been reviewed and approved. They trust eMoney. They've been reviewed and approved. And that makes it feel a lot, like frankly, more comfortable for good reason. When you connect in, I'll say Anthropic or OpenAI or like ChatGPT or Claude into Zocks, it can see a reasonable amount of information, right? Anything, I'll just go through it because I think people kind of need the details here. Frankly, you want to be able to explain it to your clients too. If you have us redact anything coming into Zocks, that data is still redacted and will never get pushed through, right? So let's say if someone is set up to redact social security numbers, that redacted, will go the whole way through and everything else. If people delete data from Zocks, that data is not going through. So there's like one question around like, hey, if I delete meetings after I push them to Redtail, like, do you still remember that? And we don't, right? Like when you hit delete, that data is gone. So it basically pushes the whole way through. When we do query, we can query into Redtail. So there may be some context, like let's say from that meeting note that's coming back, but we as Zocks don't hold it. When you're looking at, and I would say the three most common ones we see, frankly, are Claude, ChatGPT, and Copilot. When you're looking at those, and I'll start like Claude and ChatGPT are probably bigger ones. The things to look at there are they training with your data? And then also, are they storing your data? And if they're storing your data, for how long? And so you can look at the different plans. Different areas, frankly, have different plans for Claude and the way it works. Claude generally does not train with any data that comes from you, but you can go in and check whether you want an enterprise version or a business version. In any of these systems, typically once you get to the paid version, you can tell it, it won't train by default unless you opt in. I know with ChatGPT, that's also how it works. You essentially, like if you're on the free version, assume they're training with your data, just straight out. They may not, or they say they may have the right, but I would frankly get to a paid version because that is always better. You just have more controls. In addition, you can tell it not to store your data. Generally, these systems will store your data for 30 days, more for, frankly, like kind of their own compliance and checking. One important piece for those, this is really in the weeds, apologies, but Mythos, or what is now, I think it's called Flare, is the Anthropic just released this model that was kind of the big one. Sorry, Fable came out yesterday. And so for people using that, with Fable, there is no zero data retention option. So frankly, for security reasons and a variety of other reasons, they are keeping track of what you do for 30 days. Mostly, I'll just, my words, not theirs, but mostly it's so people aren't misusing the model to do cybersecurity things and bio things that we don't want to do. That's why they've done it. But you just need to be aware of that. And then with Claude and ChatGPT and like OpenAI, you can request on the business and enterprise accounts to have what they'll call ZDR, which is zero data retention. And what that means is that there is no storage of any data. They essentially pass it through and go out, and it goes the whole way through. In the systems, like in Claude, if you go in and look at, if you see your history, it's remembering it, right? So you can go in and delete it. You can go in and tell it not to hold history. You can also, I know with Claude, I don't know with ChatGPT, tell it not to process PII if you want. So if it does see it, it
Oh,
essentially won't store anything in there, and they have that ability too.
okay. So I appreciate that. Thank you for getting into the weeds because it seemed like people really wanted us to dive in there a little
Yeah.
bit. And one of the really great tools that we have is you can actually call and talk to humans. It sucks. Can answer a lot of these questions for you. So please make sure that you do that. You can actually go into Zocks and in the lower right hand corner, you can go ahead and pop that up and ask a question. And not only will you get an answer, but if need be, we can go ahead and have our service team respond to it. Now, Neil, you said that that took you an hour ish
Mhm.
to go ahead and build all of that, which, by the way, that seems flippin' insane to me that it only took you an hour. But if you, I mean, you're talking to, 500 people here. Um, I'm assuming that not all 500 are using this. If you were going to kind of hot poker them or get them comfortable to go ahead and do this, what would you tell them to get them take that leap of faith that you took?
Wow, that's a great question because not everybody likes to dig into the weeds like I do. But I think
Mhm.
if you look at it from the standpoint of, what's a good investment that I can make, even if it costs me an hour or so of my time, to come up with something that may save me over the course of a week or 2 weeks or a month, several hours. I think that's the kind of key there. It's about how can I take these new tools that are really kind of incredible, just blow my mind, and use it for good and not, I'm
Mhm.
not creating, the dancing cat videos with it, right? I'm trying to figure out how to make it work so it saves time and makes us as a team more productive so we can spend our hours doing the things that matter for our clients. And that's kind of how I looked at looked at my investment in this.
Yeah. Well, the other big questions that we're getting in, we can't answer all of these individually on this webinar, are really about broker dealers, RIA settings, organizations that are allowing you to use MCP because what we're hearing is not a lot of the larger firms really want you doing this. So this is really, really great if you're an RIA and you're really monitoring yourself, but you still need to make sure that you're checking with your compliance organizations to see how they feel with that. All right, Mark, I'm gonna tee you up for the question that I asked you at the end of our podcast. But what did we not cover? And Neil, I'm gonna ask you the same question. What did we not cover so far today that you want to make sure the audience knows about?
Does Neil have to go or get to go first, or do I? I'm up first.
Well, yeah, I'll have you
This is
go
always a
first if
hard
that's
one,
okay.
Neil. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah, there's a lot. I'm just scanning through the chat. So, and we will try, I think, in the remaining time to just rip through and frankly answer as many of those as we
Yeah.
can. I think a big one, like most of the things I'm seeing are really around kind of like data, right? And where is data and where is it going? And so I'll just kind of echo something and try to simplify it. One of my challenges is always like, how do we simplify the data story down enough? You really want to be thoughtful about what systems have access to your PII and not. If you have PII in Zocks, depending on your settings, you'll probably know if you do or don't because it'll get redacted if you don't. That data can go through the MCP interface right now. So you would want to have Claude or ChatGPT set up in a way that you know it is not storing and retaining that PII data. And frankly, if you're associated with a broker dealer, an independent broker dealer, you need to make sure they've approved it because that's exactly what they do in that review and approval process. If you don't have that, we do have something coming out very shortly that I won't get into specific timelines on, but I'll just say very shortly that allows to essentially help with that at the layer, if you will, at the interface between Zocks and that system, so that if Zocks, I'll say, is more trusted in that system, you can do that. Um, I'd love there was a quick answer for this, though. I think Matt, you put a note in there. If people have questions, you can always get a hold of our team and kind of walk through the specifics. There are a lot of details around, like, we see a lot of different fields in Orion, but there's like reports and certain things we just can't see. So if we really understand your scenario, we can probably tell you very clearly, can you do that directly in Zocks? Is it better to use the MCP interface and go through it? And depending on your broker dealer and everything else, like what options do you have there? Like, is it Copilot? Is it something else? Are you in kind of a review and waiting process? So I would just tell people to kind of reach out to us, and we're happy to kind of go into their scenario in more detail as well.
Yeah, we've got a heck of a team, everybody, who is that's what they're doing all day, every day, is meeting with all of you and answering those questions because they are the people who can help you use. One of the things that we really want is for you to stop just using 10% of the product and really start using a lot more of the product because the dev team's working really hard on all these really cool features that we want you all to start using. All right, Neil, so I'm going to punt that question to you, which is what should I have asked you that I didn't?
I don't know that there's anything that I would say other than just, continue to be curious and not be afraid of technology, right? It's a big part of our daily lives, and the more we embrace it, the better I think we are at using our time wisely. And the tools that I've seen in my 30 years have made that very true. And this is just another one. And I think the big question is, why not figure out how AI can help you, and instead of being afraid of it.
Yeah, change is hard and scary. And we understand that in an industry where you don't want to be doing a lot of changes because it can make your clients upset and concerned, this is still one of those things. And I'm going to briefly tell a quick story. We've had many of our clients win business from other advisors or get more referrals with the speed to service. And that might not be technically what everybody's calling it right now, but a client comes in and sits down and meets with Neil, and Neil has this unbelievable prep done. He's also got this on the back end too, which we didn't really talk a lot about today, which is all the follow-up stuff and all the other things. When you can deliver an unbelievable summary, tasks in order to make sure that they're going to do the stuff, because Neil was just talking about that, the stuff that they need to do, the stuff that you need to do. And if they have other advisors, which I don't remember the number currently, the last time I checked, it was like 65% of clients have more than one advisor. If all of a sudden your speed to getting their results because you're leaning into technology is exponentially faster than their other advisors, you're going to win that business. And I just think that's really important to keep in mind. We are business owners, we are business people, and business is a really important component. Now, Mark previewed this a little bit, and I'm going to preview it a little bit more. On June 24th, I need all of you to mark your calendar because we're going to launch something new. All right. In my 20 years, when I got demoed this on Friday. This is how quickly this is, they don't show me stuff because they know I'm going to talk about it, which, by the way, is really smart for them to do and not show me too much under the hood. But I was demoed this on this past Friday, and I have to say that this solution is one of the biggest shifts that are going to happen in your practice to make your overall life better. Zocks is now going to be able to help you have better service, grow and build your business, and generate more organic growth. And I'm not overselling that because I'm not even scratching the freaking surface on what's going to happen. So please, 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 we're going to drop the link in the chat here in just a minute to go ahead and register for the webinar on the 24th. And if you are not a current Zocks user, please make sure that you go ahead and scan this real quick, and we'll be more than happy to take you through a demo on how all of this works. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to learn more about this technology. This technology changed Neil's practice, and we hear it all the time at conferences and in just meetings with our clients that Zocks fundamentally didn't just change their practice, but help them live a better life. And when you have a better life and a better practice, isn't that what you're all doing this for? I think that's an important thing to leave everybody on. So if you're not following all of us, Mark, Neil, or myself, make sure you connect with us on social media, and we will see you on June 24th for our next webinar. Thanks, everybody.